Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about war pimps. WikiLeaks exposed the emails of the military-industrial complex and its inner workings. Some of those emails originated on the Secretary of State's email server. Well, some of those emails were shared with the public. And most recently, there was another leak in 2018. And the title of the email, the header of the email, is Requesting Documents Pertaining to the Resurrection Chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of buried Nephilim. The author of the email was a person named Denitra D. Senegar. This name is clearly an alias. When you do a deep search for this, the only thing that pops up with this name is a bogus LinkedIn account with no detailed information whatsoever. But when you take the name Denitra D. Senegar, which can be used as an anagram, you get the following phrases. Denitra D. Senegar is also ardent de-erasing, which becomes ardent of erasing when you translate it from French. Or it can be used in an anagram to form the following phrases. Endangered tirades, sainted gardener, transgendered AI. Weird stuff indeed. But the United States government had recently returned a stolen tablet containing part of the Epic of Gilgamesh to the country of Iraq 1 month after the military's withdrawal from Afghanistan. Not a coincidence. So, take a second look at the motives for stealing these artifacts. When episode 1 of the 2000 Iraq invasion blasted all over American TV screens in 2003 when the war was starting, what you were watching was not a military invasion, but the Second Holy War and the search for the artifacts of Gilgamesh's death. The same way that the Holy War and the Knights Templar went to the Holy Land looking for articles of Christ's crucifixion.
Of the resurrection, the crucifixion, parts of the cross, the real cross. Look it up. They were fighting over basic artifacts from Christianity.
Correct. Oh, that's correct. Yes, exactly. But for reasons that most people don't understand, they weren't looking to have these as part of some war chest. They were driven by the dark arts. And they wanted to use these in magic ceremonies to get ultimate power. But if you can find out where Gilgamesh is buried, and you can find this quote-unquote resurrection chamber, dude, that's straight out of the movie Stargate, the TV show Stargate. This email, this government email that says requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of buried Nephilim. What in the fuck is the government doing? You know what I'm saying?
Well, we already know during the Iraq War, Hillary Clinton was looking for Nephilim DNA. Allegedly, our special forces got into a fight with a giant, and one of the emails from Hillary Clinton, like I said, I don't know her personally, but said that we need to gather Nephilim DNA, or did you gather Nephilim DNA? Look that shit up.
But why would the Secretary of State need Nephilim DNA? That is in no way necessary to the functioning of that office.
Not at all.
So what do you need this for? What is the purpose of this? Unless you're one of these dark arts people that belong to this death cult. The death cult war machine that is run by War Pimps Incorporated. So people got to understand that a lot of these wars that are fought where you lose family members, brothers and cousins and uncles and fathers and sisters, and these people are just cannon fodder to them. It's sad because you lose somebody that you love, but to the death cult, it doesn't matter. These are all useful instruments for their dark materials. So the death cult is one that worships death, and they're all about destruction. And you see their fingerprint, their MO throughout the entertainment industry. When you watch these movies and they're just tearing down and they're destroying all these things that were considered sacred, it's part of their demoralization campaign. But so it's really the death cult versus enlightened people, or in the West, Christianity. But the aim of the Christian life is mastering one's appetites and bypassing material goods for spiritual goods and the worship of God. Death cult people, by contrast, seek self-validation through displays of worldly piety. Christians consider the world part of the unholy trinity. Death cultists worship it, and they want cheap grace and a pat on the back from the rest of the people in their cult, all without an ounce of self-denial or discipline. The death cultist doesn't want to change. They don't think they have to. Instead, they want everyone else to change in order to suit their personal, moral examples. Therein lies the key to defeating these people. The death cult does not produce martyrs, at least not amongst its own ranks. It has a deep aversion to suffering, and it precludes self-sacrifice. They're cowards. They are the furthest thing from the Japanese Banzai pilots of World War II. Without constant reinforcement by Hollywood, the major media networks, and big tech, the death cult would shrink back to a small group of cranks on the fringes. Consider the billions spent to insulate the death cult from contact with reality. They use techniques like shadow banning, blacklisting, intimidation of anyone that speaks real truth to their power. For now, the Fed can keep printing money, and megacorps can leverage skin suit IPs for all the loans that they want. But the cracks are showing and growing more prominent. If you need encouragement, remember that God is undefeated, and reality always gets the last word. The problem is that people, normies, they get caught up in the fray. They get caught up in what they see in front of them. People see these wars in the Middle East, and the first thing I think about is Enki and Enlil and how they created these people. They created these people to be warlike. So when you get entangled in this, you're entangled in something that is ancient. Now, there's a lot of different origin stories. They're all true. The confusion comes in where people try to place one in front of the other, and they're changing the order of operation. When you see things like Adam's calendar, you realize that these National Geographic magazine articles about how the oldest woman ever was found in Ethiopia are true, but not as important when you see things like Adam's calendar, which is 500,000 years old. And they show you these old African bones from the Horn of Africa, and they're like, oh yeah, those people were just rubbing the rocks together. No, they were mining gold in South Africa, and Adam's calendar is remnants of that operation. But here's the deal. When you look at the Sumerian kings list, you see how there's large spans of time that these Nephilim were ruling over mankind. And you see how all these people look back to Enki and Enlil as their sky gods, as the ones they have to come and save them. And then you look at the story of Gilgamesh. And the funny thing about that story is you hear about it as a kid, but it never takes any precedence. It's always something that's considered fringy or just super old from the super distant past. How old were you when you first heard about the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Junior year in high school, you hear the term because there are a couple epics that you hear about. You know, one of them is, of course, there's another one that we heard about in high school, but the Epic of Gilgamesh, I think I was a junior in high school the first time I really heard about it.
In Bible study, back at Pilgrim, when you was a little kid, you learned about Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian king and, you know, how he was punished. And then, of course, you know, we heard about Hammurabi's code. Like, we learned about that in social studies, like in third grade. But they never went into who the hell Hammurabi was. Just got to know Hammurabi's code. Why? Why these Masons put this in this book? What's that about? Why is it in this Rockefeller formatted school system textbook? I don't understand. The whole war in Iraq was a smokescreen just to go and steal those artifacts. And people were trying to figure out, why is the American government going over there to fight these people when bin Laden was the guy that made the Twin Towers come down? Well, see, this is the crazy part. Saddam, he modeled himself after Nebuchadnezzar. But Nebuchadnezzar, in the end, was outcast, and he lived in the fields like a beast, and he chewed wheat to live.
You got to remember, there was a reason we went over there the first time. We go over it because Allegedly, he invaded Kuwait, but he had asked permission before he did it. He said, "Hey, Reagan, can I invade Kuwait?" They say no. Then Bush is in there. He goes in. Then we're right back in the Middle East again for Iraq and Desert Storm and all that shit. There's a reason we keep going back over to the Middle East. I get it. Oil's important. Some of it is oil. But one of the things that these Muslims do, they don't like graven images. And what do? They crush all these statues. Yeah, don't forget that shit. And so they keep crushing these statues and shit. But some of that shit, like he said, we are in a war over relics, biblical relics, significant relics from the past. And so when these Muslims get over there, they start banging up shit for no reason, because here's what you got to understand. Saddam was a Muslim, but he had all kinds of statues and shit from the past. But these other Muslims, they get over there, they start breaking shit. That's because they're not in the club. You got to remember who's in the club and who ain't in the club. So these common...
Saddam was a Ba'athist. He belonged to the Ba'athist group.
The Ba'ath Party, yes. But
see, they were the ones that controlled all the information, and they kept all those artifacts from getting into Western hands.
But they also kept it from getting into the other Muslims' hands, because, like I said, they destroy those graven images. Anything with a face on it, they'll destroy it.
Right. Saddam was a Sumerian first and a Muslim second.
When you guys start doing the research and you get into Gog and Magog and all these, like those books like the Nebuchadnezzar and all those books that we used to hear in the scary movies, you find out a lot of that shit is realer than you think. And then you find out that there's a bunch of white guys that got involved, made some shit up, but then you find out that it was based on these old Arabic books and texts they would find. So there's a lot of shit going on that if the people you work for, say you're not a bad person, but the people you work for are evil, they can have you running evil errands and you not even realize it. You'll fuck around and, hey, I'll go get your dry cleaning boss, not realizing that he's sending you on an errand to get something else. And that's kind of what happens with a lot of these wars that we think are just wars over oil and territory and resources and over political theologies. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, they're all smoke screens for other shit. Like, why the hell do you need Nephilim DNA? Now, the first thing that teaches you is that God's real. And a lot of this shit that we learned in grade school that you thought were fairy tales
is real. It's a real thing.
Yeah. And so a lot of the stuff, like Graham Hancock, you start reading that stuff. And the one thing, I was watching his video on Netflix about the apocalypses, and he talks about he for some reason he doesn't believe in giants. He's like, look, it says that this guy had a kid with a female giant. He's like, I'm not going down the giant way. But he's saying that for a reason, because he's like, look, if this is real and this happened, then you got to understand that those giant bones you always hear about with the Smithsonian and all these giant mounds and these.
But then I'm like, yo, how are these giants getting that huge penis into a tiny human vagina?
And nobody wants to have that conversation.
Nobody wants to break that down and actually talk about how the plug goes into the wall.
But on the same token, it talks about a regular man having a baby by a giant woman. So that motherfucker had to go all the way. He had to go where the sperm couldn't go. He went all the way in, shot, it came back out. You remember the Death Star where they shot them torpedoes down the hole? He had to go do that shit. He had to fly in there manually and take care of that shit himself. They're telling you that angels were kicked out, that these demons, angels, whatever you want to call them, they were kicked out of heaven. A third went with them. And one of the things that they never want to talk about is, you remember in Greek time, you always saw these animals, half animal, half human.
And the crazy part about it is, all over Iraq, you see that stuff.
You see fish gods and human bodies.
And you see these bearded dudes on the body of a griffin. You know what I mean? Like, so what the hell? I'm not talking about Peter from the Family Guy either.
So you're automatically assuming that this shit is fairy tales. That our ancestors are so dumb and they're so primitive that they couldn't tell what the fuck they just saw. And look, I'll be the first to tell you, like, I've seen stuff in the sky, and I'll be the first to tell you, I can't tell you what it was. I know what it wasn't. It wasn't an airplane. Wasn't a helicopter. Wasn't a motherfucking bird.
Check it out. There's a very interesting article about this. It's written by Andrew George. He's a professor of Babylonian artifacts at the University of London. And it's How Looting in Iraq Unearthed the Treasures of Gilgamesh. And it's talking about how the smashing of the Mosul Museum in Iraq by self-styled Islamic State and their blowing up of a succession of high-profile ancient cities such as Nimrud, Hatra in Iraq, and Palmyra in Syria have grabbed more media attention than their wholesale butchering of men, women, and children. There is something about the deliberate annihilation of cultural heritage that strikes a deep blow against the identity of human beings, collective and individual. When a madman attacked Michelangelo's Pieta at the Vatican in 1972 and broke off the Virgin Mary's arm, public outrage far exceeded the offense taken at the mass amputation of living hands in repressive Middle Eastern courts of law. Now stop for a second. When that guy cut the arm off of the Virgin Mary's arm, that was a Masonic message. Okay? Here's the thing, though. Ancient works of art and historical monuments symbolize the endurance of human achievements. Perhaps that is why their loss seems to some more shocking than the destruction of lives that only briefly inhabit time and space. Hold tight. The destruction of cultural heritage in the Middle East is not an innovation of the Islamic State. Since Saddam Hussein lost control of southern Iraq after his army's expulsion from Kuwait in 1991, there has been a concerted effort to loot dozens of archaeological sites in what is the cradle of urban civilization. The harsh conditions of life, first under international sanctions and then during the breakup of the Iraqi state since 2003, encouraged local people to seek treasure in the ground beneath their feet. I don't think it's local people, honestly, but the illegal trade in Mesopotamian antiquities that was viciously repressed by the Ba'ath government sprang back to life and continues to this day. It has brought onto the market many thousands of small objects. Their exact archaeological provenance can only be guessed at, and they are now dispersed amongst museums and private collections worldwide. For archaeologists, the destruction of ancient sites by looting is just as terrible to learn of as the smashing of the sculpture in Mosul and the detonation of high explosives in Palmyra. But it is not all bad news. Out of the destruction and looting, and partly because of it, emerged striking gains in knowledge of our oldest literary inheritance. Now, do you think if Saddam Hussein had never lost power, people would learn about this stuff?
No, not at all. It would took another travesty for this to get out. Because
see, the crazy part is in the corner of Afghanistan that touches near Tajikistan and China, there were these Buddhist statues that were destroyed. And they were destroyed by the Taliban. Now, these Buddhist statues, when you look at them, they were carved into this side of this mountain. And it took a lot of manpower to get them out of there. I'm like, Taliban did that shit? No fucking way.
Look, hold it. You touched on 4 different things, or 3 or 4 things we got to talk about. First, when you listen to Ivan Van Sertima, he talks about how many of these iniquities are in private collections. Most of this great shit are not in museums; they're in private collections. So the black market for private collections is amazing, because remember, he talks about when he was negotiating getting the Sphinx's nose back. The splinters of the Sphinx's nose were in a private collection. So he has the guy from England on the phone, the guy that owns it, and then the person who's in charge of antiquities for Egypt. And that guy, he said he never spoke. You know why? Because the Egyptians who are there now are not the Egyptians who made the Sphinx. The Arabs who are there now only look at that stuff as a way to make money, because they're not the originators of that stuff. And so they have no problem destroying it. So they talk about that, but they also talk about how it's so many different things you talked about. That, look, if what you said was if Saddam hadn't lost power, would we have these discoveries? It would have took something else happening. Because here you just touched on the fact. How did the Taliban move this shit or destroy? No, these are these are private collectors.
There
These
you
are
go.
motherfuckers
There you
paying
go.
people to go in and remove some
And
of this
they
shit. I'm sure.
use the Taliban as a smokescreen because they were afraid that something would happen. But or they just used the war as a smokescreen, the same way the U.S. military used war as a smokescreen and go and get shit. So listen, check this out. I knew this guy. Hold on. I used to work with this guy. He was a captain. He was an army captain that was in Saddam's palace.
Oh, that's dope,
bro. The stories that this guy told me were crazy.
The stuff he saw.
No,
the stuff he saw. Right.
He wound up going to fucking Leavenworth and serving time based off the stuff that him and his men did in this fucking palace.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay. You piqued my interest. Look. Oh shit! I forgot what I was going to say now.
That's such a head crack, ain't it?
Oh, look. One of the other big issues that's coming up is that they're proving that Mesopotamia is not the cradle of life that they said it was, and so you got to understand
Africa has always been the cradle, but they want you to think that it's not.
Slow down. They say Africa is the cradle of life, but the cradle of civilization, they try to say it was in Mesopotamia. And now there's two problems with that. One, they never want to admit when this stuff was going on, those people in Mesopotamia were black. They came from Africa. And two, they've already admitted that civilization comes from Africa now.
Okay.
So
hold tight. This is the thing. Those people, the Sumerians, the Akkadians who came before them.
Yes.
They were modified by Enki and Enlil. God created the African black man, but it was modified by Enki and Enlil. Now, here's the thing. But the Atlantean Empire existed long before that. And what's even crazier is that around the same time that existed, Göbekli Tepe existed in Turkey.
But even with that, next to like a few miles from Göbekli Tepe, is they had a whole underground city that goes on for acres, and they said they found a total. They said they found 32, but they said if you do the actual math in the ones that are less than 2 stories, they found underground cities up to 300 or 200 some underground cities. So that tells you that they was doing some shit over there, and they try to say that these were to get rid of raiders, but they said the city.
Those people were built to prepare for cataclysms.
See, but think about it. Because they said those things were older than the Ottoman Empire, not the Ottoman. Excuse me. I'm sorry, wrong empire. The Huns and shit. So they were built before the Huns came to power and all that. So what we're saying is that they were doing shit, real stuff, underground, building stuff, proving argument. Look, when you sit here and do the math, and you find out West Africa, and that there were black folks in West Africa over 230,000 years ago. When you talk about Mu, and you talk about Mu was going back over 200,000 years. So those civilizations, they already had high advanced civilizations. Whatever these cataclysms had wiped these civilizations out, and then these people are trying to change the narrative and saying, okay, it started here. And look, those angels that came down and made it with these people, yeah, but that ain't the lick. That wasn't God's plan. That was the whole point of the flood, because he's saying he was getting rid of those giants, getting rid of those people. So what I'm trying to say is that there are a bunch of different stories, a bunch of different manuscripts, a bunch of different narratives, but you got to read more than just what they give you, and you can't get wrapped up in, well, we only go back 6,000 years. That's bull feathers. That's to keep you off the trail. That's to distract you. But when you talk about Thoth being the civilization bringer, and all these guys describe the same kind of cat, even in different places. Like, hey, the cat had blue skin, and he was teaching us this stuff. What do you say to that? the emerald tablets and shit. What do you say when that one cat was going all around teaching people the real stuff that we're supposed to know, but he wasn't keeping secrets and wasn't, you kind of gotta take that shit serious. That these giants were a real thing, that they were a real problem, that these people were eating humans, that Hillary Clinton really wanted some Nephilim DNA. For what? So she can live forever, or so she can have powers, or so she can fly? I don't know. But there's some. When you start reading these stories, they're not stories. These are
Dude,
real accounts.
did you see that video clip that I sent you today? And that
No,
woman,
I didn't
that
get to
white
watch it. I was
woman,
driving.
this white woman is giving this speech, and she is talking about. Let me see if I can play it while we're recording. Hold on a second, because you gotta fucking hear this shit, man. And she has this Freudian slip where she just states the 100% obvious that we have been talking about all this time, and she just throws it out there like whoopsie. So yeah, let me play this real quick, man. This shit is bananas. I think hold on a second. Was it you? Oh yeah, listen to this bullshit. Listen to this shit.
They're the first species on the face of this earth to be aware of evolution, to be aware that we are affecting our own evolution by everything that we do. The babies we eat, the food we eat, the wars we fight. They're the first species on the face of this earth to be aware of evolution, to be aware that we are affecting our own evolution by everything that we do. The babies we eat, the food we eat,
The babies that we eat?
wars we fight.
She says the babies that we eat.
Yeah.
And okay, and you're like, is that a Freudian slip? Is that a mistake? On the same token,
No, she was 100% lucid when she said that shit.
yeah. Look, on the same token,
Because we don't know who was in that room listening to that and who that was intended for.
Look, hey, when I sent you that video of the drink champs, and they were interviewing Leo Cohn, and he talked about recruiting Warren G, and he said I couldn't leave there until I pricked his finger, and I sent that to you. You listened to it. Then
And everybody just glances by that.
Dude, hold it. But now it's circulating, and they're all on Warren G's dick, but nobody's paying attention to the finger prick. He said, I would not leave there until I pricked his finger. And I'm like, okay.
He wanted to seal a contract in blood.
When you prick a finger, yes, you take the blood from the finger and you put it in and you write and you sign your name in blood. Or you put your finger on it, but you're still signing in blood. Regardless. He said he was not leaving until he pricked that finger. So please, everybody who listens to our podcast, go check out the drink champ.
That's when you go and get your side arm and you're like, get the fuck out of my house right now.
Go on, motherfucker. Go. But so people make it seem so far fetched when we're trying to tell you, like, hey, this is evil. The music industry eats its young. It's evil. It uses its artists. When, like I said, when Roscoe got on my case about one of our favorite comedians wearing a dress, I'm like, man, you're wrong, bro. He's like, nah, man. It was going on back then too. I'm sure it's gotten worse over the years. But one of my big issues with that conversation was Flip Wilson, and I'm like, I never thought that character was named Josephine. Whatever. I never thought it was funny. People would die laughing. I'm like, what are y'all laughing at? I don't find this funny. I just don't get the joke. I'm sorry. But the fact that this man,
because it's Uncle Tom shit, that's why you didn't laugh.
It bugs me. And I've seen a man wear a dress and it be funny. I grew up on Benny Hill. So some shit is funny, but not everything is funny. Some shit is just silly, and it bugs me. But all I'm simply saying is that for the head of Def Jam, Leo Cohn, to sit here and say that he had to prick the finger, that is a Faustian contract. That is selling your soul to the devil. That is selling your soul for riches and gains. That's all the stuff that we were taught not to do. So I told you about a story of somebody my wife knew, because my wife was in the music industry at one point. And his brother told him, if you go to Def Jam in Atlanta, they'll pay for you to come down, but if you don't sign that contract, you got to find your own way back. And he said, nah, man, and here's what he told his brother, my group is better than your group, is what he basically said. Like, no, we got this. We know what we're doing. We're that much better than you. He's like, oh, It's like that. Sure enough, he gets down there and he experiences some shit that if he experienced some fucked up shit. And he had to call his brother, like, hey, bro, I need money for a bus ticket back. He said, I know, bro, I got you. Your real brother had your real back in that situation. But when I tell this story, people, whatever. So here's the story. So my wife's friend in his group, they go to Atlanta. They get there, and they said they're like in a tall-ass building. And he describes the building to me. He said, oh, the first two floors are like the receptionist and all this. And then the second floor is whatever you like. So if you're in the men, second, third floor are men. I mean, third, fourth floor are men. If you're in the women, fifth, sixth floor are women and fine-ass bitches that you've never seen before. And then he said at the very end, they take you to the top floor, and that's where the head dude is, the one that wants you to sign the contract. And he said it was weird because it's not like an office, it's like an apartment. Like that dude lived there. And he said the whole time he's cooking, but he's going to the stove and he's stirring his pot. And I'm like, dude, you know what that sounds like? Because even when I tell you this, he told me the story on the phone. There was severe flooding in Nashville at the time. So my wife, she was like, hey, I ain't got no place to go. It's flooding. I can't get home. I said, well, go to your homeboy's house. So she's at his grandmother's house, and they're over there. And he's telling me the story. I said, that sounds just like Dante's Inferno. Remember the video game Dante's Inferno? And my homeboy was playing the game at the time. Mickey was playing the game at the time. And so he had a map. And when you turn that map upside down, it was the levels of hell. When you turn it right side up, it matched everything this motherfucker just told me going on in Atlanta. That building was basically the different levels of hell. And at the end of the game, the devil has his pot with souls in it. And he's stirring his pot, and he's throwing people in the pot. And I'm like, you just described what this video game to me. And I'm like, dude, that's fucked up. And literally he said, once I decided not to sign the contract, they said, you got to find your way home. And so he had to call his brother and got a bus ticket home. But what I'm saying is, if that's the different levels of hell with this office building, and why is this motherfucker stirring a pot during a deal where he wants you to sign something? That sounds so much like soul cooking. It sounds like the levels of hell and Satan and shit. So, hey, I don't want to be right, but I'm trying to tell people that when you have this head of death, they'll tell you I had to prick his finger, and nobody was offended, nobody froze, nobody said, nigga, what? nobody even questioned. I'm like, yeah, bro, that tells you that this soul thing is real and that these evil people are real, and they care more about your own soul than you do. And I think that's where we are right now, where these kids don't understand that they're more than just what they do and who they are. That that their brain is not what that's just a conduit to your soul. Your soul, your third eye, your pineal gland, all this shit. That spirituality shit is real. It's not something to be played with. And look, there's a reason that we're in Iraq. There's a reason that we're over there, because they're over there looking for proof. They're over there looking for powerful magic. They're over there trying to find stuff to make them live forever. Like I said, the war is over our souls, and we just don't realize it.
It is for sure. But then you hear about stuff like soul recycling machines and fucking go back to therapy, and like, what is this about, dude?
Go back to the Stargate. They said that there's a Stargate in Iraq, and Saddam knew about it and had control over it. So did we go over there and get rid of Saddam?
Who built the Stargate? Fallen angels?
Because we wanted access to the Stargate. What about that part? Did we want access to it? Yeah, I'm just saying.
Dude, let's go to Crazy Town.
Come on.
There's a book that came out in 2004 called The Dragon Legacy, The Secret History of an Ancient Bloodline. And the author's name is Nicholas DeVere. The Dragon Legacy is a collection of essays on the Dereshthi culture. This book was written by His Royal Highness Prince Nicholas DeVere, a sovereign Grand Master of the Imperial and Royal Dragon Court, and purports to be an official history of dragon peoples. From
reptilian folk?
Listen to me now. Far from being the characters of fable, he explains the elven race including fairies, dragons, witches, Picts, which are pixies, and vampires, were very real beings whose blood rituals sustained their super consciousness and transcendent vision and maintained their positions as overlords of mankind. Devere claims these gods of flesh and blood were the only gods that ever actually existed. Myth transformed them into ethereal deities. Flesh and blood they were, and their bloodlines descended to the present day through the Siddhe of India and the Druids of Britain. In fact, Devere claims to be part of this lineage. Have you ever heard of the Scythians?
No, what are the Scythians? I'm not familiar with
The
those.
Scythians are from the Asian Russian steppe, and they were a horse culture. So they're also known as the Danan, the Anunnaki, were descendants of the Anunnaki, who were, Devere claims, were not extraterrestrials. Okay. In Scandinavia, the Danan became the Danes or Vikings and produced a cousin lineage, the Swedes, and the Arulci clan that founded Russia. In Denmark, the castes were called the Jarl, Karl, and Thrall. In India, the castes were called Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Sudras. But the Scythian Danan, who immigrated to Eire, which is Ireland, and the rest of Europe, were a race apart. They were a ruling class, and they were the Merovingians. Full stop. Okay. The Merovingians, where do we hear this term?
That is that. What's that movie with Tom Hanks? The Da Vinci Code?
Mm-hmm. In the book, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which came before it.
Holy Grail. Yep. Well, that's the real book. That is the nonfiction book, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. But the Merovingians are the family that are in charge of Europe that wanted the Christ bloodline. So
why is that important?
For 1,000 different reasons. Because one, some people say, Christ had a kid and he got married and all that stuff.
And he moved to Europe. That's what they say. He moved to France.
Yeah, they moved
the bloodline. And that's how you got to the Merovingians. But this guy is saying that the Merovingians come from the Scythians, which existed long before. So perhaps, I don't know if this is true, that Mary was part Scythian or Anunnaki. Strange indeed. But the Scythians originated in the Balkans, Transylvania, Carpathia, and Ukraine. Now, when I hear that, I'm thinking, that right there is the Khazarians. So, in general, the Scythians, who are known as the people of powers, were tall, pale skin with gold red hair and green eyes. The Celtic lineage were stocky, short, with dark hair. The royal dragon family of the Jews, the house of David, made the Israelites an early Aryan nation. In fact, Jesus and his mother Mary are depicted with red hair. Yeah, that's bullshit. I ain't buying that.
Look, hold it. Look. Here's the biggest thing.
The Scythians and Aryan Scythian Gauls had settlements in Israel and Judea. The Aryans were
the inhabitants of France.
Yes,
the Gauls.
I understand. The Aryans were a horse culture. Now, but here's the thing, though. Aryans come from Atlantis. They were part of the Atlantis civilization which settled in the Himalayas. Now, but also the Ashanti people who settled Ghana came from Atlantis.
Look, this is some complicated shit.
Yes, it is.
No. One of the documentaries I was watching, they had a lot of good shit on there. There's some real deep shit. Basically, they were saying, look, all the kings in the Bible we found, because you always get these nigger preachers like, can you find anybody buried in the Bible? That's because they didn't exist. And so they start doing that shit. But a lot of these white Christian folks have spent money on archaeology, and what they did was all the motherfuckers in the Bible were Egyptian, and so King David, it was such and such. King Solomon was, and what they do is they show this guy was born. This guy was born at this period of time, and this happened to him. And then you realize that this Egyptian king was King David. This Egyptian king was King Solomon. He had vineyards. They literally talk about this shit. They literally talk about that shit. And then all of a sudden, they got real weird.
Solomon used to buy hash from Africans in the Congo.
Hold it. It gets deeper than that. Because what they're saying,
weed. The weed that the pharaoh smoked came from the darkest parts of Africa.
the cocaine that they use came from South America. They've proven this. They've already proven this. But the point being is that when they started getting weird on me was they said Julius Caesar is Jesus because he came from a virgin birth. His mother was this, and then they start JC. That I'm like, okay, so J and C didn't exist back then. The letter J didn't exist. So the whole idea of making Julius Caesar Jesus Christ.
It's stupid. It's this potato head shit. That's a reach.
You suck. But what it shows is that archaeologists have proven most of them cats in the Bible were Egyptian pharaohs and kings and shit, and that they did exist. And when you see, well, King David was this, and this, but you can tell he changed his name, and you're like, oh shit, if he changed his name at this time, all those stories coincide. The point being is that these histories go together, and we tend to dismiss certain parts, like, that couldn't have happened. Well, yeah, somebody was over there in the mountains, motherfucker. Somebody was doing this. And like I said, we're brainwashed because, again, when they start telling you these folks are black, I can't believe. It's not about belief. These was black folks doing black things in Africa. All that Christ went into Egypt. If he passed for Egyptian, it's because he was black. Moses, when Moses was a baby, Pharaoh thought it was his kid. He raised him as his kid. It was a white man told me, like, okay, so Moses is Jewish and Hebrew. I'm like, yeah. So he must be black. Like, what are you talking about?
Because he could pass for Egyptian, and there were no Arabs in Egypt at that time.
Yes. So Mr. Koshprick, he was Polish. He said the reason I'm into the truth is he said when you're born Polish, you're the butt of everybody's jokes over here in America. And I was the butt of everybody's jokes, and then I found out like Tchaikovsky, his favorite composer. I said, yeah, he's Polish. He was born over here, and he said, well, so you start looking for the truth, and then when you start finding the truth, you just can't deny it anymore. And he said that when you read the Bible, they're telling you these people are black without telling you. He said if Moses could pass for an Ethiopian, if Moses can pass for an Egyptian, Moses married an Ethiopian, and nobody had a problem with it. You know why? Because they were all black. And I'm like, oh. In fact, I'm so brainwashed, I'm mad at the nigga at the time. Like, no, motherfucker. You leave and come back. Hey, you were right. Because he's telling you that when they put Moses in the reed and he went down the river and Pharaoh's daughter, who couldn't conceive at the time, grabbed him. Oh, no, she could, and she was nursing him. He passed for Egyptian. Egyptians are Kemet's.
Baby was floating down. Look at that little black baby floating down the river.
Yeah, look at that nigga come down the river. Come here, boy. And so I'm saying this to say something else. So when you have all these statues of half man, half animal, and half this and half that, so you mean to tell me these people can't tell what they were looking at? I get it. So you're saying that when Jonah was swallowed by the whale, that he was in a submarine. Okay, whatever. But what I'm trying to tell you is some of that shit they saw is what they saw, and that a minotaur or these different animals that that was from the Nephilim. That was from them coming down here fucking animals and shit. I know it's not what you want to hear. When they describe the cherubim and the seraphim and the higher angels, that one angel had 4 heads, had an ox head, had a human head, had a lion's head, and something else. That tells you that what they saw was that they saw angels doing shit with animals and humans and other shit. So, look, I don't want to be right about this shit. This is some scary shit. I don't want to go outside and see an elephant running around with a man's head. I don't want to see that shit. But I'm simply telling you, stop thinking that these guys were so primitive they didn't know what the fuck they were looking at.
Okay. The Scythian caste system consisted of 3 closely interknit cooperating races. From this encounter arose the eastern branch of the Aryan, Vedic, Hindu religion, with its own Druid or Magi, the Brahmins. The Vedic religion stemmed from this contact with the elven gods and goddesses who migrated after the flood from the Balkans and Transylvania to Samaria. Let that sit in for a second. He claims The Tantra and Kabbalah are descended from the ancient Ubaid Druid philosophy, and Sumeria is not the cradle of civilization, but is perhaps the high chair. The first Sumerians were Ubaid overlords from Central Eurasia. De Vere claims that democracy has done away with the caste system. He explains that the caste system was not an arbitrary set of divisions or inequalities established through force or oppression. The system reflected the fact that people had varying capabilities, gifts, and talents. Each group had its function in society. This way it should have stayed, but the Roman Church, containing mostly peasants, clawed its way to the top and upturned the caste system on a false document called the Donation of Constantine. Following this, a 1,000-year Holocaust massacred the elven race. Today, the world is run by peasant tinkers who have put a price on everything. The true overlords are now on the bottom, while the increasingly acquisitive peasants and merchants at the top have wrested their positions from blockheaded warriors. The end product of this fiasco over the last millennium and a half can be smelled in the air, tasted in the water supply, and seen in the eyes of the diseased, starving third world children. Its results can be heard in the screams of animals gratuitously tortured in experiments aimed at testing the toxicity of vanity products.
Yeah.
In the current system, our leaders have no accountability, and they would have had in past dynasties. The usurper tinker kings, the current monarchy of England, are false monarchies based not on service or transcendent wisdom, but on worldly greed, tyranny, trade, and usury. Usury. There is much to learn from this alternate history of the world. For instance, that the influence vampires have had on European culture should not be underestimated. Who knew vampires inspired modern excuse me. Who knew that vampires inspired modern wheeled transport, invented large-scale tourism, and lent their images and their kilts to the lids of shortbread tins? The vampire was a witch in the distinct royal caste of Scythian Celtic society. Vampires were individuals and families who used the practice of drinking blood to achieve specific aims and fulfill social obligations of their rank and position. In fact, the etymology of the word vampire is overlord. Now, he warns against poser vampirism. In one, inflicts fear in the victim before obtaining blood. The blood will contain ingredients not worth imbibing. It must be freely given. Now, let's get super crazy. J.R. Tolkien, his Middle-earth, which claims plots the fortunes of the elven families and corresponds to about the year 10,000 BC.
Look, he had to be a Mason. I was told
Of course he was, but listen, that's small potatoes. Listen. In fact, he asserts Tolkien's Third Age could be comfortably situated pre-flood at about 22,000 BC if we disregard our simplistic caveman indoctrination. Other points of interest you'll learn from De Vere are that the reptilian scales of gods and goddesses of Sumeria were actually traditional metal armor. The mermaids of mere pools wore scaled armor as well. The tall tales told by David Icke regarding shape-shifting reptilians of yore are just that, tall tales. For more on what this guy is talking about, think of David Icke's discussions on reptilians. Now, one last crazy town stop. Satanism. He states, originally, the Satanists, in biblical terms, were nothing more than circuit prosecutors within the Jewish religious system. They were lawyers. So, hold it. Who in their right mind would worship lawyers? Religions happen when people don't get the point of the message and blindly worship the message and the messenger instead of grasping the gnosis inherent within the words that the message conveys. There's a lot there. There's a whole lot there. Now, hold on a second. He says the Lord of the Rings saga, as written by Tolkien, could actually exist at the same time as Atlantis.
Hold it. You said a lot. All I was saying was that the Hasatan, the word Satan comes from Hasatan, the accuser. That is a lawyer. That literally was a lawyer. So, again, that's some deep shit. Who would worship a lawyer? Jewish people. That's another conversation. As for pre-flood, that defines why the flood happened. What we're taught. And he's saying that age. Oh, hold up. Another one. So, Demon Knight. Remember Demon Knight? The second Tales from the Crypt movie? You ever watch that? You ever watch it with a Mason? Okay. So I'm watching it with a Mason, right? My friend had just pledged, and he hadn't been a Mason very long. And he wasn't. This is a guy not very religious. This guy is a Crip. He's killed people, and we're watching the movie, and he starts freaking out at the part where they show Calvary, and their Christ is on there with the two criminals or whatever, and one of the guys is innocent, and they took his blood or some shit like that. He's freaking out. He's like, "Oh, that's real." He's like, "What?" I said, "That's real. That really happened." And he's telling me, like, I'm like, "Are you sure?" Because I went to church. I ain't heard this shit before. And he's like, "I don't know about that key with the blood in it, but he's like, I do know that this part. He's like, this is real. This is not." And he wigged out. And like I said, this guy is not a pussy. This guy, I'm sorry, my friend was a murderer. I know this for a fact. He admitted to shooting some bloods. And he's like, for him to freak out about something he saw in a horror movie and I'm not talking about the horror part, but he's like, dude, that's real. And so that tells you that a lot of these stories that we're being told in movies and shit is some real shit. You feel what I'm saying? Like literally, they're glancing over the part that's not for us. Like, this wasn't for the average human being to recognize. But at the time, like I said, I think he was like a 3rd or 4th degree Mason, and he's like, he said my name. That's real. And I'm like, oh, no shit. But for him to be scared and uncomfortable as he was, this guy has been on drive-bys. In fact, me and him have been friends for like a year and a half, and then I got a roommate from California, and he walks in, he said, "Oh, I need to talk to you." I'm like, "Oh, what's up? I need to talk to you." So we walk out, he said, "Who the fuck is that nigga?" I said, "That's my roommate." He said, "I know who he is. That's Little Green Eyes." I said, "Okay." He said, "Yeah, I went to Pacoima. I think I shot his homeboy." Like, so when I'm not talking about somebody who's easily scared. This guy admitted to doing stuff around me. And so I'm like, for him to freak out. So I'm telling you that these bits and pieces that we're finding and you're learning, don't take that shit lightly. No, I get it. It's hard to believe that, but my homeboy is telling you that these different mermaids wore scaled armor. He's telling you that these different kings, Sumerian kings wore armor. They're telling you that these stories that pre-flood, going back 22,000 years, that you might find elves, that you're going to find fairies, but we're told that shit don't even exist. And look, I can't tell you how to feel about it, but I'm just trying to tell you, don't disregard everything that you hear.
Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of information there, dude. I mean, when you consider, okay, this guy says the whole thing about who worshipped lawyers. And so basically the groupies of these lawyers put these people on pedestals. And they were known as the adversary. And the Talmud is just a book of arguments.
Dude, the Talmud.
So
these people in Israel worship this thing, and all it is are a bunch of essays and arguments. And whoever won the argument is where they went with it. That's it. Now, who argues
the best
professionally?
At arguing is giving provenance or giving rank.
It's not
in their temple.
Look, this is, you hear me say this. I've said it so many times. I'm gonna keep saying it again. The difference between Lucifer and Jesus. Lucifer is knowledge. These people worship knowledge. Jesus is truth. I care about the truth. Knowledge ain't always the truth. Knowledge changes. Wisdom changes as things move, but there's only one truth, and either it's the truth or it's not. And if you worship knowledge, at some point in time, you're going to worship Lucifer. That's just how it is. These motherfuckers who are arguing, and because they worship the Talmud, like you're like, oh, the Talmud. Oh, this is another scripture from the Bible or something. This must be no. These are guys arguing over the Bible.
What's crazy is not a holy book. It's not
at all
from God.
Nope. This ain't the Ten Commandments. this
you know what it's like? It's like when you sit down and you talk with Mormons, and they'll start talking about the Bible, and then they're like, "Well, there's this other book, and you should check this book." I'm like, "No. Hold on a second. Your guy, Joseph, that guy got prophecy from a reptilian. Yeah." An angel came to him in the form of a lizard and gave him prophecy. And I'm like, y'all are cool with that? He wrote a whole book about it, and that's the book you worship instead of the good book?
That don't bother you. Just a little bit. That don't bother
the piccolo player is a motherfucker. But then you start to hear about all these dark arts groups and these covens that exist within the Mormon church, and all this Satanism and all this weird stuff that goes on, and this sex trafficking and these blood sacrifices and these rituals and these children that go disappearing. Oh,
hey, Roscoe, you want to put?
Wait, hold it, because they also see themselves as one of the lost tribes. So wait. If you're one of the lost tribes, then you're one of the tribes that worship lawyers, the adversary. Come on.
Shit, that's Hasatan. That is Satan, not Lucifer. That's Satan. And then these other niggas worship Baal. But hey, what I was going to say, if you want to piss some white folks off real quick, hey, white people, I know a lot of you guys think you're vampires. Look it up. The Caribbean vampire predates the European vampire. I'm just saying, do your research. Yeah, the vampire started out as a black guy. I know it's going to piss you off. I know that your goth costume and your pale makeup makes you think you're special, but the Caribbean vampire predates the European vampire.
Well, I mean, according to this guy, the vampires they introduced the modern wheel transport, large scale tourism.
Wheels.
And
tourism.
Yeah, and they wore kilts that were used on the shortbread cookie boxes now. It's a lot of shit. It's a lot of shit. So, but here the etymology of the word vampire is overlord. So there is that. When this book came out, like, it busted a whole lot of stuff wide open, and it's a lot to deal with because it came out around the same time as Holy Blood, Holy Grail. So while they were talking about the Merovingians, this guy talks about where the Merovingians actually come from in time. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot.
Look, just because you read it don't mean it's true, but also
no. But see, what these represents are parallel realities.
Yeah, well, what it represents to me is the fact that somebody has a lot more information. Give me all the information and let me connect the dots on my own. What happens is there's a lot of dot connecting. Look, when Bruce Lee talks about learning from these different artists, he was like, they were always trying to push their religion on you, trying to push their belief system on you, and they would teach you the art, of course, but then, well, you need to worship the way I worship, and that's what was happening. Is that give me the information and I'll figure it out myself. But then they start to add this little bit. Julius Caesar was Jesus Christ because J and C, and I'm like, J didn't even exist 400 years ago. Shut up. And that's what happens is that they just give me the information, I'll figure the rest out, but I'll connect my own dots. I don't need you connecting dots for me. You know what I'm saying? I don't need that because you're full of shit.
A lot to consider when he talks about the Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth saga. That's crazy stuff.
I don't think so. I really don't think that's that crazy.
No, I mean, okay. Wait.
It didn't blow my mind. How's that sound?
Okay, so I've always been into oop arts and out of place artifacts. And I've always known that the Earth is much older than we're told it is. And there's been civilizations that existed long before Egypt, long before Atlantis, long before Mu, all of them. They go back even further than that into time. The only problem is that we are not taught to think in that headspace where their knowledge and wisdom and truth can transcend millions of years. We're not taught to think that because we're given this shortened, mutated timeline that we're supposed to exist in.
Yes.
And then they sprinkle in the Anunnaki and the Nephilim. They're like, all right, this is it right here. I'm like, well, hold on. What about before that? What about when the Bible talks about the people outside the garden? Who? Black people. Black people outside the garden in Africa.
Black folks live everywhere.
Right. But here's the deal. Because life was... See, when I hear about these Adam and Eve stories, I'm like, that's a cool story, man. But that's not the only origin story. So when I see that, I'm like, that's cool. That's an origin story for that fork of humanity. But what we have is a composite of human beings. Because human beings, like a mixed person, is a layer, a mixture of different backgrounds. And humanity is the exact same. So when people talk about, well, the cradle of civilization and the Fertile Crescent, that's cool, man. That's a cool story. But that's not the beginning. That's the beginning of those desert people. That's not the beginning of my people.
Of humans. Look, they tell you in Nigeria and West Africa, they say our culture goes back 250,000 years. We were here before Adam. There's books about it before Adam. And, you know, white folks let it get mad about that. But then when that proof pops up, when that DNA pops up.
No, when that black baby is born in the delivery room, they're like, who was you fucking?
but she wasn't, and he wasn't. And that tells you that you was black before
you. How this baby got nappy ass hair? What's going on?
Oh, yeah, shit. Man, look at this motherfucking penis. Goddamn. But look, the whole thing that nobody wants to understand is that when they found that DNA from that guy in South Carolina, and he was from the Igbo tribe. See, white folks wasn't talking about the Igbo tribe. They talked about the Igbo tribe amongst their own people. But yeah, your dad's X chromosome. I mean, what your dad's Y chromosome? Yeah. What about it? Your dad's Y chromosome is 230,000 years old. He belongs to the Igbo tribe of West Africa. And so this chick is like, what are y'all talking about? Basically, what she did was a DNA test, and they wig out. They said, who's your father? And she's like, why? My dad just died. And so they checked the dad's DNA, and he's a black dude from America, been in America for years. But he's descended from this Igbo tribe. And they're like, your dad's Y chromosome.
The Nigbo's the Igbo.
Yeah, the Nigbo is the Igbo. His Y chromosome is 230 years old. It's one of the oldest Y chromosomes we've ever witnessed. And oh my God! So that tells you. See, how did they know that shit so fast? It's because they knew it, but they wasn't telling niggas about it. They wasn't telling black folks that they found some shit. And so here's another thing that you guys need to understand. We talk about Sheikh Anta Diop. The reason in Senegal that they have so much DNA testing is because of him. And he snuck in the tombs of Egypt and stole skin from the pharaohs and tested because they wasn't letting them in there. And so he tests all this DNA, like, hey, all them pharaohs are black. No, they're not. And then, yes, they are. That's the only reason they admitted the pharaohs were black is because he ran and stole DNA to prove it. So, look, these stories are probably more than stories. This history is some other history. It's not alternative history. It's just history. It's either true or it's not. Like I said, we're not looking for knowledge. We're looking for truth. That's all I got.
But the title of this episode is War Pimps. And that is to draw your attention to the current conflict and other conflicts that you have been seeing and experiencing and learning about throughout time. They're all based on the mechanisms of two brothers, Enki and Enlil, and how they took these desert people and they got them to fight each other and to be distracted and take all the focus away from these Nephilim.
Look, just look at America. In this 200-something year history, we've only not been at war for, 6 years? Like, we've been at war our entire existence. That's because war is not just big business, but it's a distraction. It keeps you too occupied. And you don't understand the shell game these people are playing on us while you're distracted with this war.
What's crazy is, though, today I was at the bank. I was holding court like I always do. We were talking about how the Wounded Warrior program was started because the Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, Bush war machine in Iraq and Afghanistan was putting Americans into this meat grinder and just grinding up human souls. And they were not doing anything to help these soldiers when they came back or help their families. So because of this, people took it upon themselves to fight back and push back on institutions like Walter Reed Military Hospital, VA Hospital, and have the standards raised so that people could get better treatment there. And to do something about the suicide levels that had exceeded the number of deaths in combat in war. There are 60 soldiers dying every day from suicide. And that's more that are dying at any time on any given day in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. That is madness. It's fucked up. And people have to do something about it. And people have been doing something about it. But the original question that was asked to me while I was speaking to these people was that, why are all these vets homeless? I said, because the system failed them. The system it was not set up for them to win, not after Vietnam.
I disagree just a little bit, not for the reason you think. I think that a lot of these people saw this war machine and realized that a lot of the stuff that we do over here is bullcrap. And they just don't want to. So many people think that when you see somebody homeless that they're dumb or they're sick.
No, see, but you're missing what I'm talking about, because there's combat veterans that have to struggle to get their basic needs met by the VA. I know one combat veteran that sustained damage in Iraq, and he told me that it took him 8 years of fighting with the VA just to get coverage for basic medical needs.
That doesn't make sense, dude. See,
and veteran benefits.
Yeah, because the reason you do the military is for the benefits, not for the pay. You know, you love your country, yeah. But what I would say is some of these people, when they check out of society, it's not by accident. It's like, I've done the rat race. I went to war.
They're so disillusioned, and they were sold a dollar in a dream, and they come back and realize it's all a lie.
I don't like using disillusion because these people are woken up, and they're like, this is bullcrap. You know, I'm fighting, and I really cared about my country, and I'm seeing what my country's doing to these people over here, or I'm seeing this. A lot of them, I think, woke up and they tuned out, not because they're lazy or because they're sick. It's because just the opposite. They're healthy, and they just know that this is not. Hey, this ain't cool, and they figure like this whole country's mine. So if I want to live under a bridge, I can. Of course, there's drug use. Of course, there's mental illness. Of course, it is. But some of that mental illness is from what they saw. It's from seeing that they were lied to. It's from seeing that they committed to something so completely, and it wasn't I married the wrong person. You feel me? Now, I was lied to, and that's why a lot of them just they don't recover. Um, my wife works at the VA. It ain't cool, bro. Now I get it. The VA is better now than it was when we were kids. It's much better, but we got a friend of ours, and he told me that his health care is only for 27 years. I'm like, shouldn't it be for life? He's like, no, it's not. Now I got another friend who told me that if you're in the military, if you're a vet, just go to the VA and they'll figure it out. They'll figure the money out. But a lot of folks don't understand that.
It doesn't work like that. This guy I'm telling you about was a rifle-carrying combat veteran, and he had to fight to get basic money, like, benefits.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. No, hold it. I know what you're saying. But this one guy told me, he said, if you go, that you don't have to pay. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, look, he said, my shit expired so many years ago. But if I go to the VA, they will still take care of me regardless. And a lot of people don't, he said, a lot of people don't know it. That's why they don't go and just say, hey, I got a cold. Hey, I broke my toe. He said, if you go in there and you're a vet, as in you served, they'll take care of you. He said, but that's not what they tell you when you're in combat. They'll tell you, like, oh, you only got 8 years of blah, 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 this, that, and the other. He's like, nah. He said, if like he said, I got insurance from my job. He said, if I don't like what they're saying, like say the copay is $12,000, I just go to the VA and tell them this is what I need done, and they'll do it.
Yeah, now here's the thing you got to understand, though. Military doctors are not the best doctors, okay? My dad used to talk about this. He was like, listen, he's like, I don't like these doctors. He said, but this is what I can afford right now, so I need to go get some stuff done to my body, so I'm going to go to the base. I'm going to let these motherfuckers, help me out, because that other shit, he said, I can't pay that fucking Blue Cross, what's the name?
The berth between doctors and the VA is a wide berth. You got some motherfuckers over here who are geniuses, and you got other motherfuckers over here. They got D's.
It's a crapshoot.
Just passed. Yeah, man. Yeah, bro. That's real.
Right. So, listen, man. These war pimps are dark arts practitioners at the highest level, and there's some military folks that listen to this and they're saying, "Oh no, it's not true." Your dumb ass is still drinking the Kool-Aid if you don't think that they are dark arts practitioners. These motherfuckers are telling you in their emails they're looking for the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh and Nephilim burial sites. Okay? It's right there.
Remember, Satanism is recognized by the Marine Corps as a true religion, as a religion.
Ain't that a bitch? Those motherfuckers are desperate if they're doing that shit.
Look it up.
That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.